All right, my G's, this is how I structure my drum and bass tracks. Particularly the last sort of tracks that I've made in the past few years have followed a similar kind of structure. There's always little changes here and there. And it's not like you have to structure a track this way. It's just how I do it and how I kind of think um, it works best in today's world. I mean, to be honest, some people probably make tracks even shorter than this. I have nothing against longer tracks or shorter tracks, but I just wanted to show the kind of formula that I use, which, as I mentioned, it does change from time to time. But if we just take my last song as an example, and most of you on this channel, this video might not necessarily help you because you probably already have a good idea for how you want to structure your tracks, and I totally get that. But I think there's a couple of people at least that might find this video useful, so I thought I'd record it anyway while it was fresh in my mind. But first thing to note is that all my tracks, I always write everything in 16 bar blocks. Yeah, so each 16 bar block will tell a specific story almost, each 16 bar block has a certain goal behind it in a sense. So if we just analyze this track, the last release I did, Paran, and we can see then how many 16 bar blocks we've got. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, sort of 9.5. The last one is just the outro kind of, this is not a whole 16 bar block. But so we've got sort of 9 main 16 bar blocks. So how can we describe them in this one? Let's listen to the first one here. This is the very, very first 16 bar block. So that's my first 16, and I usually always have the same idea and concept for the first 16, which is setting the scene, essentially. It's creating a soundscape. It's, introducing you to the world of the track. There's a lot of main elements already in there that you'll hear later on. These sort of flutes, bits of the drums and everything. So we're getting a lot of the elements introduced already, but really, it's not really a build-up yet. It's just kind of like literally just kind of bringing you into the world. So it's just the very first 16 is the most chilled out and calmest of all of them. Now let's go into our second 16 here. So this is the build-up, and it's the build-up 16 that leads directly into the drop. Now, what will be different on varying tracks of mine is I'll either have 2 16s and then the drop, or sometimes I'll have 3 16s and then the drop. These days, I tend to do 2 16-bar sections and then going straight into the drop. It just seems to be what I'm doing most recently, just to kind of save a little bit of time and get to the fun. But you can totally do longer ones if you want. But the main thing with the build up 16 is obviously the increasing tension. So there are a number of elements that are going to increase in their kind of speed and rhythm, and you got rises and things. So different goal to the first 16, which was just setting the scene. This one is really, really increasing the tension, deliberately. So that's the second one. And then the third 16, we're going to go straight to drop number 1, the sort of main hook and chorus then, if you like. So we had our main kind of groove that I've, designed for the song. That's where I'm sort of showing off the main part. And then as you sort of see in the second half, I start to introduce like a riser. So we get a lot of variation and automation coming like on top of our main groove. Okay. But yeah, that's then my first drop. And then we're going to the second part of the drop now, the second 16 on the drop. And you'll notice here is that I'm creating an obvious shift in energy. So pay attention to how it kind of changes. Okay, so we have 3 main 16 bar blocks here, which sort of constitute the first, main drop of the track, the first main half. And I like to have 3 as a minimum usually, because I feel that is the best way to tell a story. And I think if you can get 3 really great 16 bar blocks that are all different, all unique, then that's the main beef of my track done. Really, that's the hard part, getting those 3 nice and different 16 bar blocks. This second one, as you saw here, as you heard, sorry, I sort of actually increased the energy and tension on this one. If you noticed, it kind of got even more hectic than the first one. And this was always going to change on each track. This second 16 on another track might become a little bit more down tempo, like slightly more chilled. The idea is that there is a clear conscious shift in energy. So whether you shift things up in energy, get more intense, or you bring things down and things become more sort of chilled, either way is kind of fine, as long as you put an intentional shift in energy in place, up or down, then it's kind of all good. You want to feel that change though. You want things to be changing. Let's move on to the third 16 here. You'll notice the energy where I've sort of ramped it up for the second one. Now I finally bring it down and release some of the tension here. So obviously it's still like pretty nuts because it's quite a nuts kind of track, but it does have a much lower energy kind of feeling than the first 2 sections, because you got this kind of sort of melodic thing in the background now. This da 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 da. So it kind of slows it down a little bit, and you still got some rises and things, giving it like sort of a little bit of extra tension towards the end as we get to the next part. But in general, it's a lower energy than the first 2. So those are like the 3 3/16s that are super, super key and important to get nicely composed and have them all different. So it's really interesting throughout. And then we move on to here. I tend to usually do 3 16s and then it'll go to my breakdown. Okay, so that was the breakdown, and that essentially is quite similar to my very, very first setting the scene kind of 16 bar loop. But it's different though, because I try to make the elements not repeat. I try to have every single 16 bar loop, if I can, to be different. So even though it's the breakdown, I'm using a lot of the same parts. I've got new little effects that are slightly different and pitching things around a bit to keep things interesting. But it's the same vibe. It's just the sort of letting the track stay still for a moment, just kind of letting it breathe. So now we're going to move to the next 16, which is again going to be another build up, of course, but try to do it slightly differently to the first build up. Okay, so it's if any two sections were very, very almost identical, it's going to be the build up here and the build up here. It's not always the case, but in this track it's fairly similar. It's just sort of towards the end where things get slightly different, especially the way that it drops into the next section is slightly different here. And yes, so for our second drop, here I'm just going to do two 16-bar loops and then finish, because the main part of the track for me are those first three 16s. Those are the key ones that I focus on to get really, really nice. And then second drop, I do want it to be different still. Often case, in a live mixing environment, it might already have been mixed out to this point. That's why the first three 16s for me are the most important to get it sounding really, really nice. But let's continue anyway. The second drop, things just get a little bit more hectic and remixed. What I do now is once that part's done, I'm going into shifting the energy lower this time. So before, on the sort of drop, I opted to go the second 16 be increased energy, shifting the gear up. Now on this part, I'm shifting the gear again as we go into the new 16, but this time I'm shifting it down. So that's a conscious decision there, because I'm kind of bringing things down towards the end of the track. So we'll just hear the last 16 and then the outro. So the last sort of main 16 here, you could tell it's quite similar to the lower energy one over here, but it is different because especially the second half, instead of adding sort of risers and tension, I actually start to filter the drums out and filter some of the main elements out. So in that case, it keeps it more interesting as well, because it's slightly different automations going on. And then as you sort of fade everything off and get to the last part, the outro, I love to just pick like one or two of my favorite elements, like the pad, for example, here, and some of the white noise, and use that to sort of compose a little outro with a nice smooth kind of finish. But yeah, that's just how I structure my D&B tracks usually at the moment. Subject to change, of course, but this is a formula that can be adapted here and there. You could have like 4 16 bars on your drop and then 3 later if you wanted the track to be longer. Or you could have a longer build up, 3 16s and then 3 over 3 main parts. But that's the sort of rough structure. And if you were unsure on how to structure your track, then try and copy this structure, because this is what has helped me the most. And specifically having 3 main 16 bars on the drop, which are all kind of a bit different, but all have like their own, unique level of energy and their unique kind of just thing going for them that keeps them all slightly different. Composing 3 great 16s for the drop is like my number one priority always. And then, whether I do a longer build up or how much of a second drop I do is kind of secondary importance. But that is the key thing, is make 3 great 16 bar sections and make sure they transition into each other well. Each one has a slightly different level of energy. And if you focus on that, it makes the whole rest of the writing process a lot easier, in my opinion. So that's sort of my main focus, is getting those 3 great sections all really well composed. And then, that just helps me out a lot. So hopefully it helps one of you guys, this little video today. And just wanted to share that while it was fresh on my mind. Hope you guys have a great start to your week. Peace out, much love, and I'll see you tomorrow.